On this episode, I'm very excited to be joined by an English footballing icon and a man who has inspired a generation of flair footballers. The one and only John Barnes. JB, thanks for joining us, mate. Absolute pleasure.
As always, mate. Anything for you, you know that.
You know. With our guests, we always start. Let's take you right back to the beginning. What was it like growing up in Jamaica for a young John Barnes? Talk me through that.
Well, my dad was a colonel in the Jamaican army, so I grew up on the army base my whole life. And when you say it's an army base, it's like, I don't know, 100 acres, and they've got a pool, and they've got football pitches, and there's no schools. But I had the free run of going to see my mates because it's very safe on the army base. Of course, Jamaica's not the safest place for an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old boy to be running around. But because I grew up there, I was playing football out till 11 o'clock, and my dad played football for Jamaica. He was a colonel in the army, but he played football, so I grew up playing football. So I remember being out. But of course, then coming to England as a diplomat's son, we then, you know, lived in as much as, you know, all my mates lived not far from you in Mornington Crescent and Camden Town, and we went to school in Marylebone. Yeah. But we lived in Highgate, we lived in Hampstead, in Golders Green, we lived in Mayfair, we lived right by the Ritz. So I had a very privileged upbringing.
Obviously, we've joked about my connection is because we went to the same school, you know, and, you know...
A few years later, though,
a few years later. But, like, you know, you think if you go on to play for England, you'd like to think you're the best player that's ever come out of your school. I'm not even the best player to come out of my school to wear number 11 for England on the left of midfield. That's such a coincidence.
Well, there you go. You listen, I've got a number one song as a rapper, and I would like to have the best rapper from my school. But Adamant went to my school.
Yeah.
The first girl I went to Marylebone before I went to Haverstock.
Yeah.
So Adamant, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so how can I say I've got a number 1 Adamant with that at the school? So there you go.
I'm going to go off piste a little bit here because obviously you come from Jamaica and I've what was it, late 70s, early 80s when Bob Marley, because he lived in the next road down to me in Chelsea, and I watched a documentary about him, about how his music, the Jamaican reggae scene comes to, you know...
Well, my mum knows Bob Marley. My dad knows my mum and dad know Bob Marley. Well, my mum was a record producer, a television producer. She was always on the shows, and Bob Marley loved football. So my dad...
Yes.
He was a colonel in the army.
Park.
Yeah, so my dad played football. He's a colonel in the army, but of course, because he's a good footballer, there's no professional football. Then he managed the Jamaican national team, and the most famous Jamaican footballer was a player called Alan Cole. We call him Skill Cole, Rastafarian. And he went to Brazil to play for Santos, and he then didn't make it, but he came back and said they wanted me to cut my dreadlocks, and I wouldn't. That's why, so Jamaicans love him. So he's the Jamaican hero. So when my dad coached the Jamaican national team, and my dad is a disciplinarian in the army, but Bob Marley with his dreadlocks, Rastafarian, smoking ganja, marijuana in the dressing room and stuff like that, he had a little mate who he brought with him with a guitar, Bob Marley. This is before Bob Marley was famous, because Rastafarians know each other. So my dad said he'd always be coming on this bike with this little fool with a guitar in the dressing rooms trying to smoke marijuana, and that was Bob Marley.
Your journey is so unique in the fact that you went and you playing Sunday football for Sudbury, and you got picked up at 16, nearly 17, I think, by Watford.
By Watford, yeah. So I played left wing for St. Joseph's on a Sunday, and one of the players who played for St. Joe's also played on a Saturday for Sudbury Court. So he said, come and play for Sudbury Court on a Saturday for 3 months. Taxi driver drove by, saw Sudbury Court playing, saw me, knew a scout at Watford, said, come and look at this boy. And at that time, my mum and dad had already become, it was a 4-year diplomatic posting. So we knew we were going to go back to Jamaica. So this is the last 6 months of me being in England. I'm just playing football. I'm going to get offered a scholarship to Howard University. So I'm going to go get a football scholarship, go and play in Howard. 4 months before that happens, taxi driver sees me playing, come and train at Watford for a while. 2 months before my mum and dad go back, I'm going to Howard. Watford said, do you want to stay and play? So I signed for Watford.
Did you have the dream in your head there, or was it, did you think the time was running out and you wanted to be a professional?
No, but look, and this is the thing, you see, because had I gone back to Jamaica, I didn't know I was going to be spotted, be a professional footballer. I would have played football. I would have played football in America, not professionally, gone to university. If I'd gone back to Jamaica, I'd have played for there was Santos Boys Town Cavaliers was my team. And that's the thing, you see. So I never dreamt of being a professional footballer, but I always knew I would be playing football. It's not until Watford said, come and train with us, that I thought, well, if I do well, then I can become a professional footballer.
So you go to Watford, you make your debut against Oldham in 1981.
Yeah.
I mean, how special was that?
As soon as I went to Watford, Graham Taylor was like, okay, you're starting first year pro. And he's looking at in the running, in the weights, going to a lot of weights and stuff like that. And I was so disciplined. He then involves me in the first team. I've played one reserve game. The first reserve game, and this is why football was great back then. The reserves played on a Saturday at home in the stadium at 3 o'clock when football was played. Saturday, 3 o'clock, the reserves played in the stadium if the first team were away.
You're right, okay.
And the first game of the season, Watford played Newcastle. First reserve game of the season on the same day, we're playing at home against Swindon. 3 o'clock, I'm playing. I score after about 30 seconds against Swindon. That's my first and only reserve game. Right. So we played against Swindon. Watford played against Newcastle away. Luther gets sent off against Newcastle. So the next game is Oldham at home. The second game of the season. I've had one reserve game. No youth team games. Never played a youth team. Against Oldham, what happens when you get sent off back then is you just miss the next game. So Luther's now the next game. So he puts me on the bench for the first team. Right? He puts me on the bench for the first team. So I'm on the bench. Second game of the season. I've only had one game in professional football, the reserves the week before. On the bench against Oldham. I got on for 13 minutes. He put me on for the last 13 minutes. That was it. I must have done all right. I don't think anything particular. I didn't score. The last 13 minutes, you're not really going to do much. The third game of the season, Luther is now going to come back into the team. I expect to go back to the reserves. Chelsea away, third game of the season. He doesn't put me on the bench. He puts me in the team.
Wow.
But Chelsea away, third game of the season. This is my second game for Watford. Played against Chelsea. We won 3-1, and I never left the team after
Never
that.
looked back.
Never left the first team after that.
Yeah. Graham Taylor was the manager. Like, was he a discipline? He must have been like your dad, disciplinarian.
I can't speak highly enough of Graham Taylor. I'm going to tell you a story about Graham Taylor now, which is an incredible story. I did a thing with Luther about a year ago, and Luther said, and Luther only found out probably 6 months before that. Now we're talking about this is 2021. We're playing against Oldham in 1982. And don't forget, when you're talking about Black Lives Matter, racism with football, back then in 1979, 80, 81, that's not even a conversation. You know what I mean? You know what's going on. Bananas squaring the crowd. No one even talked about that. But in 1982, we played against Oldham. Halftime comes, we come in, Graham Taylor's not there. Now, even at the time, I didn't notice anything about it because Stan Ellis, the coach, took the team talk. 2 minutes before we came out, Graham came back into the dressing room and he goes, right, lads, off you go, blah, blah, blah. We didn't even think anything of it. Never knew anything about it. But a year ago, Luther said, do you remember? I said, no, he didn't even remember. But he said, this is what happened. What happened was we were playing against Oldham. And Roger Palmer, black player, played for Oldham. Graham Taylor's on the side of the pitch, obviously, the game's going on. And Graham Taylor heard 2 or 3 people racially abusing Roger Palmer. No one heard it. And back then, if you heard it, it wasn't a big deal because it just went on anyway. No one heard. Graham Taylor never said a word to us, never said a word to anyone. Graham Taylor went up into the stand and got the PA system from the microphone, you know, the PA man who announces. He walked into the middle of the pitch. This is halftime. And he says, you've got John Barnes and Luther Blissett here. He said, if I hear anybody, any racist abuse towards Roger Palmer in the second half, you will never come to this stadium again.
Wow.
Whoever that is.
Wow.
Put the mic down, came in, come on lads, out you go, out you go. Of course, the press, no one made a big deal of that because back then there was no conversation. This was 1982. That's what Graham Taylor was doing. And he doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't say, oh, I did this. And Graham Taylor said, no, say no to racism. But he just went on the pitch, said that, came back in, just said, right, lads, off you go, go. And we went on one. Never said a word to anyone. He was a great man.
I remember going to a game at Wembley and you was getting booed. And I was looking around and I was like, how can we boo John Barnes? Like, even my mind, I'm like, he's our best player. And you scored a free kick in the game.
Against Holland, 2-2.
Was it Holland? Okay. So my mind isn't playing tricks on me.
It was 2-2, no.
But what do you think that was, John?
Well, first of all, it started the game before.
Right, okay.
San Marino. Now, we played San Marino. We beat them 6-0. But on the Sunday, in the News of the World, Jimmy Greaves had done a piece about loyalty to England. And what I used to say is, you know, when West Indies play England at cricket, I'm from Jamaica, and you would Brown Robson people, we're going to beat them. So, of course, that was then the thing. John Barnes, you know, wants West Indies beating England at cricket. And, you know, he wasn't born in England, so he's not, you know, necessarily loyal to England. So then when the game started against San Marino, you remember they scored in the first 10 seconds. Yes, so we go 1-0 down. They should be doing Piercy flipping back pass, not me. But anyway, so they go 1-0 down. Now, obviously, we're going to come back and win. But we go 1-0 down. So for the first 10 minutes, it's like, oh, flipping hell. And News of the World story, John Barnes not committed, so they started to boo me. 1-0, 1-0, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. We won 6-1, but they continued to boo me throughout. And I thank Graham Taylor because it was horrible. It was horrible, and I must admit, I wanted to come off. It was that bad.
Right.
And Graham Taylor said to me at the end, once again, he said, because I wasn't playing badly. We're winning 6-1, so I'm playing like anybody else, but every time I got the ball, they were booing me. Graham Taylor said, you know what? Even if you had played terribly, you weren't coming off.
Really?
He goes, I would not let them win. He said, if you had tripped over, scored 5 own goals, he goes, you were staying on the pitch. I was not going to take you off. And I thanked him for that. I must admit at the time, I did want to come off because, I mean, it was horrible. But then I thought, and when Graham Taylor said that to me, that I would never let them win. And they were booing it for nothing to do with football. So the next game against Holland started again. But I scored the free kick. And it is how football is, because as soon as that free kick went in, everybody started to cheer, didn't they?
Your iconic moment, and I think, you know, for me growing up, what your goal in the Maracanã was. You said you didn't effectively mean to score. You were looking for a pass.
Well, everybody does. So what you do is, and there's nobody who gets the ball, no player, Maradona, Messi, nobody gets the ball on the halfway line with 5 players in front of them and think, I'm going to dribble around these 5. Either I'm going to lose the ball or I'm going to score. You look to pass and you can't see anyone to pass to, so you keep going.
Yeah.
Maradona's goal, you keep going. So I really looked for someone to pass, and there was no one there, so I thought, well, I've got to keep going. And then what made the goal, and this is once again, when you talk about fate, you know when things happen and you do things and it's like, unbelievable. And in your own mind, it goes, well, I never really meant that. So, as I've gone through, and I get to the edge of the box, and you can watch it, I'm now going to shoot.
Yeah.
Now, as I'm about to shoot, Tony Woodcock makes a run across. Yeah? And as I'm about to shoot, I've seen him in my eye line there, and therefore I can't shoot because I'll hit him. So I've gone to shoot, and he's jumped up because someone thinking I'm going to shoot. I think I'm going to shoot. But as I'm put my leg back to shoot, as I'm coming forward, he's in the way, so he jumps up, so I drag it inside. Only because I would have shot, but he was there.
Yeah.
But as I've dragged it inside, obviously the defenders think I'm going to shoot as well, so they've fallen on the ground, and I'm dragged inside, and I've gone flipping, and I'm right in front of the goal. But when you see it on television, just gliding, and it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and it's all just like, and look at me, I'm not even looking, I've got my eyes closed, you know what I mean? All I hear in my head is...
It lives in the memory.
I used to see you, and I remember you just go...
Yeah.
And you're going like that, and people going, look what you're... But in your head, you just go, I've got to get out of here. What am I doing? I'm just going out.
You just want to pass the ball.
I know, yeah. And I tell you, it took so much power in me for when he scored that goal. Not the handball, the other goal. Not to just go. How can you not appreciate that goal?
It was a work of art. Barnsley, great times at Watford, but you're synonymous with your time at Liverpool. So Kenny was the man who brought you in. I mean, they were the top side. Was it an easy decision to make to go there?
At first, it wasn't, because in my naivety, I'm 17, I'm playing for Watford, we're in the first division, second to Liverpool, quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup, we finished second, FA Cup. I'm staying at Watford my whole career. Love Watford, we're going to be a great team, we're going to win the league. But of course, you know, it's just a period of Watford's time where this was never going to continue. And you see clubs come up and do that. But I didn't know that, I'm young. Graham Taylor, once again, the great man he was, he said to me, you've got to go.
Really?
Now imagine a manager now telling players they've got to leave rather than try and keep them. So Luther went to AC Milan. And those players he felt were his boys. He had a responsibility to do their careers as well.
He sounds like such a selfless man.
Absolutely. And he's Watford's manager. He said, for you to grow, be a player, and he said to me, you're going to Liverpool.
The trophies, it's glittering, you know, multiple league titles, FA Cups. The European Cup's not there, but that was at the period when...
We're banned for 5 years.
We're banned.
Liverpool were banned.
Is that something you regret? Or
not at all.
Not at all?
Not at all, because, you know, back then, I mean, now people talking about going to a club. If they're, like, for example, they're talking about Liverpool doing what they're doing now, so Jude Bellingham's not going to come because if they're not in the Champions League. That's ridiculous. You go to a club because you look at the history, the traditions of the club, the potential that the club actually has to know that I still think they finish in the top 4, but if they don't, Liverpool are Liverpool. So back then, I knew Liverpool weren't going to be in the European Cup. Peter Beardsley was the most expensive player in England. He came to Liverpool. We know we're not going to be there, but that's not what it's about. It's about going to the best club to play the best football, to be able to do as well as you can. So it wasn't about the prestige of the European Cup. It was about the prestige of the club. So therefore, I came to Liverpool, and if we were banned from Europe forever, I still would have gone to Liverpool.
You was at 86 World Cup, 88 Euros, and 1990 is the one that you know is very special to me as a young man watching it. What one of them teams do you think was the best England team you played? I mean, I remember you putting a cross in for Gary Lineker to score in 86 in a famous game. But 90 team was the one that...
86 and 90 weren't dissimilar. Gaz obviously came in 1990 and Gary Lineker was still there. 86, Robbo actually got injured in 1990, so Platty came in. But that 86 and 90 team, but you know, we were never the best team in the world, so should never have won the World Cup. You know, that's the thing when you talk about England, we should win the World Cup. You look at other teams, and there's some good teams around. You know what I mean? So what we should do is be getting to the semi-finals and the quarterfinals and stuff. And of course, in 86, no matter what anybody had done, Diego Maradona was incredible. Nobody could have stopped him. And unfortunately for the Argentinian team, not unfortunately because they won the World Cup, but a lot of people were very disrespectful to that team, thinking they were a one-man team.
Right.
Burruchaga, Anatacachia, Valdano, they had good players, but Maradona was so much better than everybody else. They were saying, oh, it's all about Maradona. But he was just incredible. I've never seen another player like him, ever. So that's why in 1986, I was just watching in that game. I was on the bench, I'm just watching Maradona. Good thing I had an England shirt on. And I tell you, it took so much power in me for when he scored that goal. Not the handball, the other goal, not to just go. How can you not appreciate that goal?
It was a work of art, weren't it?
I mean,
we can look back in the context of it, and we, from proud Englishmen, it hurts. But the actual beauty of the goal was just.
And of course, the handball was a bit. And I'm going to give you another exclusive here about Hodgie. You know, Hodgie and the shirt. 2002, I'm watching the World Cup. Just watching the game against Argentina, and I'm looking at it thinking, oh, I remember the game. Because what had happened was, as soon as the final whistle went, we've stormed off the pitch. Thousands of Argentinians came on the pitch. Maradona's on their shoulders. They're having the lap of honor. I'm not even thinking about Maradona, but I'm just watching the game. So I'm watching the game thinking, what a great game that was. The game finishes. You see us walk off the pitch. All the Argentinian fans come on. Maradona's on his top. Just watching the thing. Oh, look at Maradona. He's that, blah, blah, blah. And I've gone on the television. This is 2002. There's Hodgie coming out, walking on the pitch. Thousands of Argentinian fans. Steve Hodge fought his way through all the Argentinian fans. Got his England kit on. He was on the bench. Pulled on Maradona's sock. Maradona's looked down. Hodgie's gone. Give him his shirt. Maradona's just gone. Give him his shirt. I'm like, yeah! Not thinking anything of that. I thought, look at Hodgie, Maradona's shirt. Flipping hell, that's 2002.
Yeah.
When did Maradona die? Last year, year before last? £7 million later.
I know.
Hodgie, £7 million. But Hodgie didn't get his £7 million because Sotheby's took 20%. So I think he only got 5.5.
That's a racket right there from
That should have been
Sotheby's.
flipping my shirt.
That
should have been my shirt.
What foresight that would have from Hodgie.
Oh, no, yeah.
Maybe we should have him in charge of the bank.
But not only that, because he never said anything to anybody. I mean, he never came in and said, look what I've got. Hodgie's obviously just gone, whoop, came in, put it in his bag.
Unbelievable, sir. Good luck to him. I'm glad. I hope he... so look, some good of it for an Englishman come out of it that day.
I know, it's a wrong Englishman, but at least an Englishman. Well, Jamaican Englishman could have been them. Should have got that.
John, it's been a pleasure talking about your career. You know, we need to touch a little bit on Newcastle at the time and when you went there. What a team. I'm reading the names. Rush, Barnes, Shearer, Gary
Well, Rush
Speed.
and Barnes were in their 30s, so you can talk about Shearer and Gary Speed. It was a good team.
Yeah.
It was a good team. I'd gone there at 33, Russia was like 35 or 36. But they were in the Champions League. You know, Liverpool weren't. We finished with Newcastle, finished, we went there. When they were in the Champions, that's the only time I played in the Champions League for Newcastle.
Incredible.
Yeah, we beat Barcelona 3-2.
Yeah, I remember the game.
We beat Barcelona 3-2. But once again, that is a situation whereby expectations were different. You know, I remember for Newcastle just to be in the Champions League was great. And the fans were fantastic. And really, I just wanted to be successful more than for them because they're so loyal.
Yeah.
So I had a great time up in Newcastle.
And then you finished your career at Charlton, and this is where we crossed over. We had this off-air discussion. I remember it vividly, but I was a 16-year-old, I was on the bench at West Ham. You was at Charlton, and we had Razor playing for us. I don't know if, sometimes your memory plays tricks on you, but I just remember Carl Tyler and Razor going at it and a punch-up in the tunnel afterwards, and you in the middle of it breaking up, me somehow getting in the middle of it as a 10-stone, dripping wet 16-year-old. And I remember just looking at you thinking, wow, there's John Barnes. I'm actually doing this.
I'm about to knock him out. The thing about it, Joe, is that what you have to remember is that football back then, well, not so much back then because it was 99, but even before that, because I've been playing, obviously, since 1980, this was happening all the time. You know, fighting in the tunnel, fighting in the dressing room, fighting on the pitch. So for a 16-year-old boy, you've never seen it before. This is like, how is this happening type of thing. I mean,
I've seen it, but not with the finest rapper England's ever produced.
Well, there you go. But of course,
Park.
you know, every now and again in Somerstown, you got to get stuck in.
You managed Celtic. You know, you brought in Kenny was the director of football, massive club. Would you have done anything differently in your managerial thing? Would you have started at a different level? What a club to go into.
Listen, and this is how I knew I was going to be under a lot of pressure. Sheffield United kind of like had a word with me about being the manager. And then Kenny came in And I was thinking, I hope Sheffield United come back. I would have gone to Sheffield United because I knew that I wouldn't be accepted at Celtic because of many different reasons. I'm not from Scotland, blah, 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 and what have I done, X, Y, Z. And as strange as it seems, I went to Celtic because I never had another option. Normally you go to manage a lower division team because you've got an option higher up. With me, I had to go there because I couldn't go anywhere else because I knew that when I'm at Celtic, if everything goes well, I said, if we lose a couple of games, I'm going to be in trouble. End of story. Now, it's interesting because, of course, we won the first out of it, 13 games. We won 11, drew 1, lost 1 to Rangers, 4 points behind Rangers. And all through that period, I was getting hammered. We had scored more goals than Rangers, who were a very attacking team. A.L. Berkovich, if you play with A.L. Henry Clark, so we were playing really well. But we lost to Rangers. And throughout that period, of being 4 points behind Rangers, won 11 games, I was getting abused from the press. Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. So I said to myself, if this is what it's like when we're doing okay, if we go through a sticky patch. So I said to my missus, ex-wife at the time, no, ex-wife now, my wife at the time, because we're going to go up. I said, don't bother moving up. I said, I'm not going to be here for long. But my thing was I wanted to manage, and I still want to manage, and I felt I could have done a good job, but you have to be given time. And I knew from the first 6 weeks that if everything went well and we won all the games, it would have been fine. But I knew if I went through a sticky patch of losing as few matches as you can, that I wouldn't last.
I mean, you said there you still want to manage. Is that something you would do if the right opportunity came?
Well, the right opportunity isn't going to come, is it? The wrong opportunity will come. The club I'm going to get is going to be a club that haven't got much money, haven't got great players, but their expectations, because John Barnes is there now, is going to be like, well, why aren't you doing something? So it's a question as to whether I will take the wrong opportunity, because the right opportunity is not going to come along. So, I still think I would like to do it, and I still think I would do it under the right circumstances, not meaning the right club, but meaning, I have to be able to afford to do it.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing now, and my lifestyle now, and of course, when you've got 7 kids and stuff like that, you've got a lot of money to pay out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you become a football manager, you have to give all that up. And the club that I will be going to will not going to be paying me a lot of money. So it's a question of whether I'm able to do that.
Listen, it sounds to me like knowing that there's a little bit of something inside you that I think you're going to end up doing it.
Well, if I had my way, but unfortunately there are other circumstances that need to, other stars have to align, and I don't know if we're ready for them yet.
The stars will align, keep the faith. Quick fire round, right, here we go. Who's the best teammate you've ever had?
The best teammate I've ever had from a footballing perspective is Peter Beardsley.
If you could go back and change any moment of your career, what would it be?
I would not change anything because, of course, once again, you can take the rough with the smooth.
Yeah,
because I can change lots of stuff to then be great and be brilliant and be perfect, but that's not reality, so I wouldn't change anything.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, as
always, Joe. As always, mate.
BT Sport Pods.